I mean, you're on the left, so.
Wait, why did you do that? You know what? You act like I can't. Um.
Oh yeah.
Took me a minute. Took
Okay.
me a minute.
Yeah, worship and word conversation Saturday afternoon. We relax. We take spiritual principles and make them super practical. That's what we're doing today. Let me just tell y'all, I just woke up.
You deserve to be on that side. You're out here
Good.
talking about you just took naps.
Jesus took naps. I just woke up. I feel like the nap that Jesus took. That's how I feel right now. So
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I didn't nap. Did lay down though. Laid down my burdens down by the riverside. Donna
Yeah.
is chiming in with us. Elaine too?
He's a dynamic duo. So
Gotta be, right? Gotta be. Gotta be. Yeah, it is interesting to be on the left side,
mm.
on the left side of the
Okay, so here's a funny story.
wow.
Is this is many, many years ago,
Mm.
many, many moons ago. I was speaking at a youth retreat weekend, something. So my joint was after lunch, morning thing. Somebody spoke for the morning. I was
That's a
doing that.
setup.
I was doing the after lunch
It's
segment.
a setup.
So I eat real quick,
Mm,
and I was like, "Yo, I'm gonna take a nap real quick."
mm,
I eat real quick, go to the room, cabin, take a nap.
mm.
And next thing I knew, one of the guys there was like, "Yo, Pierre, you're on in 5 minutes, man. You got to get up." I was like, "What?" I had slept. I looked at my watch. It was like 4 o'clock,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
so the whole time, man, it's like this huge sleep mark on my face.
Oh
Like you
man.
can see it in the
Little
video.
print.
This huge sleep print on my face. Yeah, that's how I feel right now.
Mm,
That's how I feel
yeah.
right
Got a whole just print just on the side. What's going on, Hazel? It's great
now.
to see
Oh,
Hazel.
they're going to Sight and Sound.
Oh wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's what's up though.
Yeah, Elaine is on the bus with Hazel and the Pathfinders. They're going to Sight and Sound.
Okay.
Man, what is it? Esther is it Esther this time of year? What's showing at Sight and Sound in Pennsylvania? Have you ever been to Sight and Sound?
I don't think so.
No, I mean I wanted to go. I've seen it on
Mm.
when they do a live stream
Yeah.
recording, and I know the Pathfinders from Breath of Life go every single year. I think like it's a thing.
Oh, okay.
Sight and
Yeah.
Sound's real cool.
Okay.
Real
Yeah.
cool.
No.
Hazel said yes, Esther. Anybody else been to Sight and Sound? Let us know in the comment section if you do the Sight and Sound thing. If you don't know what Sight and Sound is, yeah, just Google it.
Really? I thought you were gonna break it down just now.
No, no. I mean, I've never been, so I just be projecting and speculating, which I have no problem doing. Which we have no problem doing.
At all. At
No.
all.
Keep a huge section of our country in prayer, y'all.
Mm.
Tornado ripped through Kentucky.
Really?
Yeah, Kentucky, Illinois,
Hmm.
some other spaces. We got some friends in Kentucky, and they sent us some video not too long ago. Man, it's cool, man.
Yeah.
Tornado came through there near Western Kentucky University
Hmm.
and just tore up, man. Houses,
Wow.
businesses, tore some stuff up.
Ah, um, if it's not the economy,
Yeah,
if it's not war,
yeah.
it's a natural disaster.
Something. It feels like it's always something.
Or
Feels
some
like it's
political
always.
unrest or something like that.
Hmm.
It's like four main areas. Speaking of main areas, uh, that's what we talked about last night.
Hmm.
The three areas that Paul was really agonizing over the Colossians to to avoid, to overcome, avoid, maybe both. Um, Paul is an interesting character. So for those of you that didn't see it, go ahead and check it out. So we talked about Colossians chapter 2, a little bit of chapter 3, and he really just kind of said, listen, there are these empty-headed philosophies and nice sounding sophistries that have nothing to do with Jesus. Nothing.
Yeah.
And
Man.
y'all are just eating it up. Stay away from it. He said they're also legalistic, or a lot of you have legalistic tendencies or practices. He's like, listen, avoid it, stay away from it. And then we looked at that a little bit too, when he was talking about not just diet, but the days, right? So the two, I think, still to this day, the two largest probably debates between religions, if not denominations or sects, that are probably more theocentric. Maybe not theocentric. That's probably not the right word. They're more theology driven. That's probably not the right word either. You know, like I'm trying to find. You know what I'm talking about? Because
I
there's
know what you're
some.
talking about. It's
Yeah,
tough
yeah.
to nuance it.
Right. It's either dealing with what you put in your body or how you expend energy with your body, right?
Yeah.
And so that being said, he hit on what's going on, Cerise. He hit on the and then we looked at First Chronicles and then also Second Chronicles. He hit on Sabbaths, new moons, and festivals, and we looked at that from the Old Testament, which is also always a grouping of three. And he also looked at it in Galatians because he mentioned the same thing again, but not just as Sabbaths, new moons, and festivals, but he put the days to it. So the Sabbaths, which are weekly ceremonial practices, the new moons, which are monthly, and then the festivals or the feasts, which are yearly, and they're all grouped together. So we understood that he's like, listen, don't let anybody judge you with, your diet, but also with these particular laws. And so, we did that to differentiate what kinds of laws he was referring to. And that does not include the actual Sabbath, but we also said that Jews and Gentiles were also
they're fighting,
debating over, well, which Sabbath is it?
Yeah.
Not the one in Colossians 2, but like in general, Lord's Day or the old day, Right? So there's that. But we came down to the fact that, as Paul was saying, it doesn't matter what you decide to ascribe your interpretation of how you believe Jesus has or is looking for you to fulfill expectations, commands, because they look different for different people, different groups. But he said, if you're doing it out of this obligatory sense of work, and it doesn't, even prayer, if you're praying because you think that by praying you'll stay in, and there's a difference, y'all. We know that without prayer, we know, but then we also talked about communication. There are people who communicate because they don't want the negative fallout that would result in you not connecting with your spouse or your partner, your significant other, or your family. And then there are those who communicate because they want to, right? And so that also then lend to us being in and free from, not in, but free from law, rules. And we understood that, speed limit being an example, you can follow the speed limit for the sake of following the speed limit because you don't want to get a ticket. Or you know how to drive. You know that if you needed to, you could always go above, you could go below, but you decide to drive the recommended speed limit. Well, it's not recommended, it's mandated speed limit because you want to be safe. You want to look out for other people in your surrounding area. So anyway, so we kind of looked at that last night, and the biggest takeaway was that without Jesus, who is the fullness of wisdom, mystery, and reality, you will fall into one of those categories, But anyway,
Chris, that's got me thinking, man, how, like, as we think about our personal journeys, I know it's really easy to go institutional, to even go denominational.
Yeah.
even local church. But when you think about your personal journey
Mhm.
and your personal just growth, spiritual growth, what are some things? And we'd love for the family to chime in on this as well. What are some things that you realize, for whatever reason, how it was taught to you, or how you interpreted things, or for a sense of personal just comfort?
Mhm.
What's something that you've overcomplicated or made more than it should be, that when you think about it now, to you it's off-putting?
Yeah.
You're like, man, I was like that. What's something that fits into that bucket for you?
Self-defense. I actually had a conversation with this about this actually yesterday.
Mhm.
Interestingly enough, you start to broaden your perspective of, not broaden, but you become more aware of where you are on the spectrum of liberation
Mm.
when you start connecting with other believers who are not in your same group, denomination, sect, whatever. And then you start to see where you lie. And so I'm in this place where I'm like, man, if I have a family, will I ever own?
Mm. Mm.
And I think there are two sides to the spectrum.
Yeah.
There's one side that's like, yep, because I don't care who or what I believe in, this is going to be the thing that is going to save my family. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
The other side is, all I need is Jesus and the Bible, and we will be safe. So you got the person who might technically be the extreme pacifist,
Yeah.
and the person who is, I don't know what to call that, but the NRA trigger happy person. Maybe I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. And I found myself being closer to that side, not to the side of that old ethical question that we probably had in our ethics class. Back in the day, if you had, and this was a real thing, right? If Nazis came into your house and they're
You
looking
lie.
for people that you were hiding away, yeah, would you lie? Right? We talk Rahab, right?
Rahab straight up lied.
But then what we say was, well, she was a prostitute. She wasn't, so God winked at her.
So the ethics change. We do make up stuff like
we try to twist things up. So I realized I become closer to the middle. I don't think that I would feel like I would need that to solely protect my family. However, at the same time, I'm not averse to it as much as I would have been in the past.
Jesus has a statement, and we could take one of the complicated statements of Jesus. There are a lot of them that are seemingly complicated,
which are on both sides, right?
And Jesus is like, "Lo, if you harm a little kid,
yeah,
it'd be best for you to tie a stone around your head and throw you into the water."
Yep.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's very dark.
Yeah. Suicide.
Very dark.
Yeah.
It's violent.
Yeah.
And how do we wrestle with those? Because I think we have this picture, this animated picture of Jesus.
Yeah.
And we still don't know what to do with get the swords. Like we don't know what to do with that scripture.
Right. And then on the other side, he's like, well, if you live by it,
you die by
it. Peter, what are you doing? Stop it. Right. You got the two balances. But Peter's like, let's go, let's get him. And there's a challenge with that because technically he was obstructing
the plan.
The plan. So they're but yeah, she was like, yo, get two of them joints. Yeah. And so I think for me, personally, I'm thinking now more so about what's important.
Yeah.
Like and would I allow particular things that I used to believe, or maybe just adopted, not even necessarily ascribed. And this is interesting. I don't think I might have asserted publicly, yes, but it was always just like we never lived around or grew up with any of that. And so now it's like in the space where, well, what's important? Listen, the other thing too that really hits home, I'll just touch a go that personal experience, where we had a situation in the fam, and we asked like church members to be like, "Yo," and it's like nobody wanted to, and it made me realize that we aren't prepared when it comes to protecting our own. It's almost as if as soon as you become a certain kind of believer, you kind of just don't listen. If you were in the and you know,
Yep.
if this was a different, bro, if this was a different context, or if you were in the hood, like,
No question.
you touch one, you touch all. That's it. Like you would be terrified to even want to lay your hand. And I think that a large part of that for me got suppressed because I'm like, yo, we not all for one for all. Because there's listen, P.
Yeah.
And maybe that was a good thing because maybe I would have probably not even been here.
It's true. That's true. That's true.
So you know, but yeah, man. So I think those experiences, and then also just, you know, maturing in the faith, and just even just critical thinking, and just like, where am I, you know, my walk with Christ, and what do I deem as valuable, and what would I be willing to do, not just for myself but for the people that I love and care about, and then what's permissible.
Yeah.
Right. What would I think God would be okay with? Deli says, this is an interesting one. It says, insisting that her boys wear a tie to church every Sabbath. It took me all these years to realize that Jesus did not care about a tie on Sabbath. I actually went to a church once where I could not preach unless I had one.
Me too.
And nobody was willing to give me one. So I had,
because if they gave you theirs, they would be out of it.
So we went ahead and got one. But becoming all things to all men, right?
Wait a minute. Hold on.
For the sake of the urgency.
Hold on. What do you mean you got one?
Oh, my dad went and he was like, you know what? I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and get one for you.
See? So they put your pops out of sorts. So you see what?
Because I was just like, yo, I'll just fine. Okay, if I'll get it. He's like, nah, don't worry. I'll get it.
So I want to come at this one too, because it's a thing. So growing up, man, like church clothes is like, you know, generations change.
Yeah.
And you know, our particular generation, you wore your church clothes until the sun went down and thereafter. Like you were at the social with your church clothes on. There was no changing. You know, and then you saw generations after you like bring their clothes to church and change right after service, or then they were just like, I'm just wearing jeans to church. It's just how I'm coming. Bruh, you know, and it's just like, oh, how dare you desecrate the house of the Lord with your jeans? Like that's the perspective. You know, and part of me is like, okay, cool, the emphasis on wearing ties. Hey, can we at least clean the suits though? Like if you don't insist that we wear a suit every week, can we at least
take it to the clean?
At least take it to the cleaners.
But God wants you to wear your best. So what if my pair of jeans is actually more valuable than my trousers?
How do we determine what best is?
Because some of us got some clothing that would be technically casual or business casual that costs more.
It costs more. You know, a pair of Jordans, $200 pair of Jordans, $80-$90 pair of jeans,
over 15 pair of JC Penney loafers or something.
And how do we determine what the best is? Giving our best.
Yeah.
And we have all of these clothing things too. That tie. I remember I was in one location, I won't say where, and I didn't wear a tie. And the person, it was after service. And they were like, hey, you know, you look much better when you wear a tie.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I want to wear one, sometimes I don't. It's not a big deal to me personally.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, do you like James Doggett? And she said, James Doggett is one of my all-time most favorite preachers ever.
Yeah.
I said, it's interesting. James Doggett doesn't wear a tie ever.
Or if he does,
he takes it off. And she said, well, that's different because he's older.
There we go. There it is. And there it is. Yeah. What is considered the best? And then the question is, um, who has brought that up? Where does that notion even come from? Because I remember passages in scripture where the Lord says, "I'm showing up personally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, y'all take off everything and make sure it's clean."
Yeah.
So is the best about the kind of clothing, or
And then he has passages where he says, you know, I've married you and I've put a ring in your nose and on your finger.
because I own? So yeah, let me go.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? But this is where culture comes in, right?
Cultural nuances are
Right.
so big.
Because wearing a suit to an occasion is typically more in the Western. Well, it's probably more than Western now because I think we've it's a whole other
We've
conversation.
colonized the cross seas.
Yes, we have.
Is it fair to say that?
I was in Benin, Africa, and they were suited out. And I was like, man, y'all ain't hot.
It's dark, 95 degrees outside. We were in dark black suits.
Y'all ain't hot.
Yeah.
I'm hot. But yeah, so this idea that what we actually deem the best for God is, it's two-sided, right? So part of it is cultural, where you do your best and you present yourself as best. Yeah, listen, Hazel was like makeup, nail polish. So let me tell you what we're not gonna do. We this is an age old. Yeah, we ain't going down. We already, but listen, for some people, that's their best though. Put on your best face,
your best. Listen,
your best accessories.
So Donna says, also one of my favorite lady preachers, Dr. E. Piper Mandy, says she will be all right if we let her take off her shoes. Just take it. If you got to take off your shoes to preach, take your shoes off. I also heard an old preacher say, I can't remember. You know how we attribute things to old preachers, and old preachers say old preacher said, so we don't really know who originally said it. Old preacher said, if the barn needs paint, paint the barn.
That sounds like an old.
It sounds like an old preacher.
Wipe it off.
Yeah, if the barn needs paint, paint the barn. Yeah. Man. Listen, take your shoes off.
This is what we find in Colossians 2, right? Like this is what Paul is saying. Listen, this stuff is not that serious. As a matter of fact, okay, you can even do some of the stuff, but your intent has to be different.
Yeah.
Don't think that you are obliged to do any of the things that has been written under the old covenant. Once you feel like you are tied to, I must do these things in order to, we talked about it last night, win God's approval, or to prove to God that I am still saved.
Game over.
Game over.
It's game over.
Game over. It's like, now it's like, okay, God, please renew my heart, because clearly there's some things. So going back to your original question, it was me having more conversations with individuals who extend beyond just our bubble. Our bubble of understanding worship, our bubble of understanding just living, just daily living, right? To realize where I was on the spectrum. And there's some things that I was just like, man, there was a time in college I didn't go to the movies. You remember?
I remember. Of course. Watch them DVDs though.
It's crazy. Like, listen, for some of y'all to be like that, don't think that I was.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, y'all think, all right, we're not gonna go down that road.
Bro, I remember when I first went to college and came.
All right.
Was it college or boarding school? Yeah, I first went to college and came back home.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? What is this?
Listen. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. Like, I didn't go. I was in public school, but a lot of the stuff that we were taught, or at least we saw or heard, stuck. And yeah, thank God I'm a little bit more free now, y'all. Thank God. But
I need to write this. Donna dropping. Okay, Dr. E. Piper Mandy. I'm gonna write this down and see if I can find an old video.
Okay.
She said she got it on a cassette, but
Mm.
people will be uploading stuff to the YouTube, so I'm gonna check it out.
Oh yeah, we were listening to old CDs that we like, Christmas joints and gospel joints, and we were like, man, some of these we had the case, but we don't have the CD. At one point when I was in school, ELP, so I took some of those CDs to school with me, but I never came back from my internship to get all of my stuff from Andrews. So that stuff probably I got thrown out of Berman Hall. I'm almost certain, because it was in that storage situation. So we were just looking up, because on Amazon you can take photos of products and it'll pop up. And my dad was like,
"Yeah, it's there."
It's like, and you don't even need to buy it. We can just stream it now. Like, man.
I think Cerise put Christmas. Maybe we'll save that to next week because that's gonna have some fun with that one.
Okay.
I think this was gonna take up maybe the bulk of the rest of the time that we have left just in this conversation, man.
Balancing the Sabbath, remembering versus being, remembering to keep it holy versus being legalistic.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm still traumatized. And it's not it's the culture.
Yeah.
It's not my parents. It's not. Yeah. It's the culture. It's not even necessarily in my church. It's the. Remember when you got to Andrews, and you're like, and I don't know if this is a thing, Lana, in California. You got to the Andrews, and you're like, what do you mean y'all going to the beach? It's the Sabbath. What do you mean y'all going to the beach? The beach? And you getting in the water? Oh, y'all asking for a special lightning from heaven on y'all,
bruh. But I wonder. See, okay, so here we are. I wonder if I'm trying to think. Was that? I'm just kind of being specific because I don't know. I could be wrong, but I feel like we then did programs and things outside of the norm, right? Maybe we did, but I feel like we did. I don't remember ever going to a beach though. Maybe now, maybe in the last 20 years, but as a youngin, I don't think.
I mean, you're in Miami. I don't know what it was like, but growing up where I grew up on the other side of the state, there was no beach to go to.
Right.
So the idea of I think part of it was the idea of if you're doing anything on the Sabbath that causes a smile, you are in danger of hellfire.
Yeesh. Yeah,
it kind of felt like that, and I don't know if that's just the reverse aggravated projection of a kid. Our memories are fallible.
Yeah.
But it kind of felt like culturally, like even the people I was around at church. Now we would talk about church things.
Yeah.
If we did anything that made you laugh, that was enjoyable. Oh, yes, because of a misinterpretation of the text. Doing your own pleasure. So I can't do anything that
Isaiah 58, 13 and 14 of all of the passages we want to, so I think that here we go. Here we find, I couldn't do anything. We have somehow made the sacred.
This is what we're talking about yesterday.
Solely solemn. If it is anything above solemn, it is sinning. Black Adventists versus white Adventists, different SDA were
very
you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
What's the other word? Victorian. Very Victorian.
Okay.
Victorian culture is very.
Yeah, and that comes from I haven't finished read the book, but pagan Christianity, right? The more you are, the more of that Eurocentric, because that's really where a lot of it came from, right? Approach to piety or piety and holiness. You then are closer to God, So hymns that are sung in a very classic,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even the dressing. I think suits I believe, I could be wrong, y'all, but that's a Euro thing, I believe. Suits, I think they originated from over there. So you've got all of these things that kind of we have created. But here's the question though. The question then is, don't we need
Oh,
signs and symbols, right?
Lord.
Don't we need particular
Warm now, Chris.
yeah, I think we might be getting there. Don't we need these things to at least try to make real what worship is? Because everybody needs to, right? We're not just going to show up to worship naked unless you're an exhibitionist and somehow that is a thing. And it just very well might be. There might be people somewhere in the world that says that God wants us at our most vulnerable.
I'm sure there's a
So
cult.
we're going to show up.
I'm sure there is.
But don't we need these things? Whether if it's a suit, whether if it's a particular song, whether if it's the style of architecture of a building. Don't these things, when we put it together, help us to conceptualize the kind of God we're worshiping? Like, do we need these things? Because if we don't have them, then there is no consistency.
You're stoking the fires today.
Everybody's just doing what they want to do. If we don't have particular symbols that represent something, so if a suit or a dress represents worship, albeit the same suit and dress could be represented for a banquet. Oh, you said club?
That's our go-to reference.
Yeah, it is.
For churchy people, the go-to reference of anything worldly.
You just take the suit, the jacket, you take off the blazer, or you keep the blazer on, but you put the jeans on instead.
That's why you take the tie off, because you're not wearing your tie in the club. You take the tie off and you got to open.
Yeah. That's why you need to put. Some of y'all need the tie, because some of y'all need that noose, that jewelry noose around your neck. So is it necessary, right? Is it necessary to even if we know that there is no value in these things, is it necessary to have a set of symbols that then defines this particular subculture of believers?
I think it's tough because you said subculture. So when do we determine, or what's the demarcation of when one subculture ends and the other begins? So you take Lana, who says the beach was always a Sabbath outing, and so was horseback riding and Bible basketball. Like it needs to, if I get the scripture right, I'm hitting this 3. I don't know. Explain Bible basketball, because I'm intrigued.
That sounded about right. That sounded about right though. That sounded about right though.
Bro, I ain't gonna hold you. We play basketball like the weekend of my wedding.
California different though.
We play basketball Sabbath afternoon.
California is different.
We wasn't in California. We was in Michigan.
Heathens.
Yeah. The weekend of the wedding. Yeah. Sabbath afternoon. That's how we roll in California. We are the definition of bootleg Adventists, right? And so we're talking about lines of demarcation and culture. Jillian says Black Adventists, White Adventists, 2 different worlds. Then Caribbean, like that's another like. When my wife tells me about, I'm
guarding the edges.
We start on Thursday. We shining shoes on Thursday.
So here we are again, right? Like, by removing any of these practices.
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
Does it dilute that particular culture? If you say, yeah, we're not going to do that, we're going to do this, does it even put you in a different category? Or a different culture altogether, because that culture negates or just like skips over some of these particular set things. But I don't know. I'm just throwing questions out. People.
Yeah, we really throwing questions out. Well,
yeah.
Another one of the things that we kind of joked about, or it's a running joke between you and I, is when we came against a paradigm where we couldn't do those things.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we're at church on Zoom, We gonna wear a suit?
Now, y'all forgive me, but I kind of clown some of you, us. I can't say y'all. Some of us that have done that. I'm just like, why? Once again,
Yeah.
it's preserving, right? So should
These are really good. These are the reason why we have these discussions, y'all, is because these are really what people talk about. And arguments and fights break out over if you're gonna get dressed for church or not, in churches in front of the television.
has the culture changed because the medium has,
Mm.
right? So it's no longer in person, it is now virtual. But does that mean that because the distribution channel, so to speak, of how I am engaging with other people,
Mm.
because that has changed, does that mean that there are core, let's be real, let's be honest, for a lot of clothing is a big thing.
A huge thing.
So let's call that a core, unfortunately, but let's call that a core.
It's a core value.
Yeah. Or if we want to say a staple symbol, do some of those core or staple symbols change just because the medium or the venue has changed?
Mm.
So going back to Lana, right? You're in a church building, you dress up. You're now at the beach, where you playing Bible basketball. Do you still wear the same clothing? And if you don't, then that is a part of that culture. We dress based on where we are. Cool. So if that's the case, and I'm now zooming at home, do I dress based on where I am?
Mm.
Because do I dress up at home for worship? I'm at the beach, so I'm going to dress accordingly at the beach. So then it begs a question.
Okay. So when I've given some presentations,
Yeah.
right, I've worn a suit.
Mm-hmm. Full blown.
Full blown suit, like
Yep.
all the way down. Even though I always wear flip flops, and I tell people I have flip flops on, and I ask them what are they wearing on their feet. It's like a running joke in my presentations.
Yeah.
Does the suit now become my best? Like because what we're talking about, if you're just chiming in with us, we're talking about some of the practices or habits that we have that can seemingly overcomplicate our relationship with God, our understanding of him, and our spiritual journey. When I put on the suit, does that become my best? So if that's my best, am I never wearing my best when we hang out on Worship and Word? Low. Yo, Lana got me rolling, bro. She said, I still remember them unrolling the backslider scroll.
Mercy. Now listen. Is that a thing that, when you get older and you look back at these symbols, you're just like, wow, I remember back in the day when, or is it just kind of like, oh my goodness, we did the most? Because Cerise says it depends on the audience, right? Okay. Who's the audience in worship?
Who's the audience? We're
not the audience. So if the audience never changes, but the context does that then inform how we dress if the audience is still the same? If God is still the same, he is the person who is really the critiquer, or should be, of our worship. God, we pray that you will be pleased with what we are bringing to you today. Then it begs the question, he hasn't changed, but the venue has changed. Building, beach, bedroom, Zoom,
park.
So I was trying to keep the alliteration going, but but park, and then so now if it's based or depending on the audience, and God is the same audience, does God, or would he expect us to dress differently in the venue if he is the person? Now we can get even more nuance. Well, it's not just for God, or it's not just for God, but we are doing it in community. And in this community, what we are doing for a virtual presentation last year. Hey, listen though. Like, I think we all at some level had some level of
Yeah.
still like putting on something
Mhm.
to differentiate. And so it goes back down to this core question then. Okay, so if the audience is the same, but the venue changes, but we are worshiping in community. And so if the expectation is the community is expecting that I show up in this way when I worship the person who is the audience, then would I then be a disruptor if I chose to say, well, he's the only one that matters. It doesn't matter where I am. I'm going to wear what I would wear to the beach, to the building.
Okay, so I got a story.
Okay.
And then we'll take Zacchaeus.
Which, by the way, is disruptive. But yeah.
So here we go, bro. I was at a church, and a guy came to visit, and he had a hat on.
Fitted?
It wasn't. It was more like trucker.
Okay. Okay. Like one
snapback.
of those
snapback. Okay. I think was it snapback or was it like a more casual, like a? I don't know. It was a hat.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're praying for the bus of Pathfinders who are on the side of the road. Yeah. So yeah, we know God is going. God, we know that you see this situation.
Yeah.
I have it charted and mapped out. We pray that you give peace and calm to the Pathfinders and their leaders, and that the replacement bus and all the transition happens quickly so they can get to their destination. Yeah. In Jesus' name. Amen. A man comes to church. He has a cap on. Usher's like, yo, you know, depending on the church you go, ushers are like FBI, bro. Usher's like, nah, it ain't happening. It ain't going down.
You shall not pass.
He was like, I just, I didn't think it was a big deal. There was some cultural nuances too.
Yeah.
He's like, yo, I didn't think, I just want to wear my hat. It ain't a big deal. Like, Usher was giving him the business. There was a guest choir that day.
Is that the reason why they said?
The question that he posed was, the guest choir, and I think it's like an African theme.
Yeah.
Afro whatever.
Oh, and they had
Caribbean, and it was everybody had on hats, including the dudes.
Yeah. Hats or like turbans or headwear.
We can make a new
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, because the symbol, right?
Symbol. Yeah. But in that moment,
yeah.
So we talk about interpretation, we talk about cultural nuance. In that moment, the person saw, I have a hat.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah.
He has a hat.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how do we navigate, as Pat said? Pat, you should be in on this conversation.
Go ahead, drop that link. By the way, for those of y'all just tuning in, listen, we ain't talking about the whole should you wear this, and it's not about that. We're talking about signs and symbols and how these things impact the culture that you're in. Yep. And not only that, but then how does that translate to the Colossians 2 look that we had? We looked at the lens, and there's some things that Paul was like, yo, it's not even that deep. Like you're not on that. But then we looked at Galatians 4 and he said, I decided to do some of this stuff just so that we can have a conversation, but y'all need to stop all it.
Like Ceresa's like, yo, I took my earrings off. I wore a skirt because I didn't want y'all to be caught up.
Right,
I want that to be a thing.
Yeah, because when Paul said, I will become all things to, he wasn't just talking about non-believers. More so, he was talking about the people who were already believers, but were limited in their liberation. So he says, I'm going to limit the scope of what I know isn't really that big of a deal, just so that I could commune with y'all. Why? Big picture, for the sake of the urgency of the second coming of Jesus Christ. Because yes, believe it or not, they did believe that he was coming like 2 weeks from now.
Well, right? soon, the clock on soon started when the angels was like, yo, why stand you gazing?
Right.
So they were,
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been in soon for a while, man.
Yeah.
We need to talk about that in 2022, man.
We
We need to talk
do.
about it soon.
We do, because some people can argue, well, a day is 1,000. Okay, you can we can go down that road.
That's cool, but I only get like 3 score and 10, so
That's all I get.
that's all.
I get a full blown 70, if that. COVID running around, and so now, you know, here. So let's add that on top of it too.
Oh
So
yeah,
does the time and
that's a
the
good question.
right
Come
the
into it.
time? Oh, who asked the question?
We got to get to Donna's question after.
Okay, cool.
Zakia's,
So
after your comment.
okay, yeah. So we have now different contexts, such as venue, where you are. As a matter of fact, you can have one side where that same gentleman that you're talking about, P, has the same hat on, but he decides to put it not even backwards, because people don't even do that anymore. But he puts it on, but like slightly to the side and popped up just a little bit. Same hat, different sign, right? So we got venue, we've got maybe even how you use the particular signs, and we're talking about now in the worship context, y'all.
Yeah.
We've got now timing, because there's certain things that were more urgent then
And then
than they are right now. And so the question is, even in the midst of all of these different things, the context and all of that, the audience of one is still the same. God says, I am God, I change not. And so just let that simmer. We're gonna go to the comments.
We'll come back to that one.
Yeah.
And remember, we're talking about the reason why this conversation is even complicated, and we're gonna get to Donna's comment after Zakia's comment, is we realize as humans, wherever side of the spectrum we find ourselves on,
right,
we're complicating things as we get into spaces where we make this nuanced conversation becomes a core pillar.
Yeah.
And we forget the whole audience of one.
The whole thing.
We forget God in the mix, because we're trying to figure out what is the uniform of faith or Christianity or whatever.
Right. So Zakia said, I visited a church today for a youth service and was in jeans and a nice top, but I dressed how I normally go to my church, where they do not put emphasis on what anyone wears. I admit I didn't put much thought into it, into what I needed to wear to this particular church, or so for a second I felt out of place, but I quickly got myself together. And rightly so.
Yeah.
Different culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so and find Donna's I think he said Donna had something.
Yeah, this one. This goes back to Paul's position.
Okay. Because Zakia, I think that is a very natural response to,
we all do that,
being in a different play. And I think that as you were getting yourself together, it might have been also helpful, as I'm almost certain you didn't say it, but I'm almost certain that you were still accepted, right? I don't even think you were tolerated. I'm going to go ahead and assume that you were accepted. Like, okay, even if it was because of out of their, like, oh, well, she ain't really know better. That's okay. We love, yeah, she a visitor. She don't know how we do things here. There's a whole other thing too, because because then this also adds on to another nuance. If my signs or how I present myself or what I do for God is different than yours, but you automatically think that I don't worship the same God that you worship, then who's really the one that's judging? Colossians 2, right? He says, let no one therefore judge you.
No one judge you.
Right. So
no one judge you.
And it's interesting. It's interesting because he then hits on, and we're going to get to Donna's, he then hits on them who, could fall into the trap of empty philosophies, legalism, and carnal desires, right? But he doesn't say, therefore, you don't judge anybody. He said, because of all of this and understanding the foundation of Christ, in Christ, he says, therefore, don't let anybody judge you. What does that mean? He's like, listen, y'all have been liberated. And there's some things that you no longer have to do. And when you choose not to do it, the likelihood that other people may look at you differently is going to be very high.
Very high.
Therefore,
Very high.
now we talked about the fact that you can't let anybody not judge you.
Right. It's,
Like you can't force somebody like, don't judge me. And then, that doesn't work like that. He's saying don't let their judgments impact how you continue to live your life. in
oh, run it
Christ.
back. Run it back, Chris. Run it
Don't
back.
let
That-
other people's judgments, how they perceive you, impact how you continue to live your liberated life in Christ. Let me go even further. The judgment here, it's a great way to understand what it means to be judged. Usually with judgments, there is an always or a never statement.
Mhm. Mhm.
You ain't never gonna change. That's
You're
judgment.
right. Oh man. You
Oh, they
always do
they
this.
always, yeah, they always. Once you add, listen to me. Once you add some sort of eternal fate over someone's path,
Powerful. Powerful.
you have decided to judge. So when you choose, now we're kind of slightly on a tangent here, but when you choose to continuously have low expectations because you don't want to be disappointed by anybody, you kind of are judging other people because you think that all people will always disappoint you. So what I will do is I will always have a low standard so that I would never at some point be hurt or disappointed by people who typically or always drop the ball.
Is it
Judgment.
tangential? Is it tangential? Because I think
no.
about how that impacts, remember, overcomplicating our
Yeah.
faith walk and our relationship with God.
Yeah.
Then I create a low expectation of my faith. Like I'm praying,
Yeah.
but I ain't never really expecting God to do anything because I don't want to set myself up for disappointment
Right.
if I go hard and the thing doesn't come to pass.
Yeah.
So the same way I deal with other people, I kind of take that same position in my relationship with God.
Therefore, Jesus says, because by the measure that you judge other people, that's how God is going to. Oh, he ain't never going to. Cool. That's what you. and it's not because he's saying I'm gonna be petty because that's the way. No, because you know what? That is your level of acceptance. Does that make sense? If you say that if this person does X, Y, and Z, and because of these things that they have done in their life, or because of they will never be able to recover, God will come to you when you have done certain things in your life, and he will extend the grace that you should have extended to somebody else. And just as you rejected that to them, you will reject what God is trying to give to you because
every single time
you can't even see that person recovering. So God is like, here. And you're like, no, that ain't I must work my way to your approval, and then you can extend the gift that you wanted to give to me. Just like I'm expecting the person who I thought would never go and change, they need to go through a period of before they can prove to me that they are by their fruits you shall know them. Yes, but that's not how grace works. All right, so let me get off that. Patrick said he's scared to come on. Just come on. Just hop on the link. Hop on the link. How do we navigate how we come across to others who are visiting and watching? Let me tell you something. Most of these churches now that are online, if I was sitting in there, I don't want to go in person.
He ain't got no glasses to throw today, y'all.
I'm not gonna throw them. It's the only pair I got. Because it's like y'all ain't even got it together. So for me, I'm sitting over thinking, well, if you can't get it together virtually, leave my house to go to a building because I don't think that y'all have it together in person. That's a judgment.
It's a judgment.
It is. Yeah. So how do we navigate that? That's a good question. That's a good question, Donna, because I'm a person of spectrums. On one side, it's mind your business. You came here to worship God and God alone. It's between you and him. Don't worry about it. Nobody else that show up. It's on one side. You come in and it's just you and Jesus. All right. Okay. So then the other side, is you worrying about not just even talk, but just worrying about what everybody thinks. Not even about you, but maybe what everybody thinks about somebody else who came in. So it's probably not even about you. So you've got these two like extremes, I would say. Maybe there's a third, but there's one that's like, I don't care about nobody. I'm just showing up for.
Yeah.
And then the other side is,
Yeah.
God, I know, I know it's about you, but I also care about what dang near everybody thinks about me.
That's the struggle's real.
Yeah. So how do we navigate that? Well, I mean, first of all, identify what side you're on.
Mm-hmm.
Or where you slide on that spectrum, right? Because in order to navigate other people who visit, you got to ask yourself, well, what are you navigating? What are you trying to work through? Somebody that comes in and doesn't look like who, somebody who comes in and is kind of like an outlier. They're the misfit. They don't fit into the cultural norms, signs, and symbols that your community have collectively created, right? You have a set of things, and so they come in and they look out of place.
Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate that? I mean, we could go Bible. There's a banquet parable, and the person that shows up, kingdom of heaven is like this feast. Everybody now gets to the table. There's a whole long backstory of how they even got there because they weren't invited first to begin with. They were the backup. Wow. They show up, and the one who was the backup showing up, and he wasn't dressed the way that he should have been dressed, or she wasn't dressed in the way that they. And so they show up, and the very first thing that the king does, now remember, in order to sit at this table, it's an invitation, it's a wedding banquet. The requirement for you to partake is you need to wear the kingdom clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody got the clothing on, cultural norm. Somebody comes in and they're out of place. How do we navigate it? The first thing that the king does, right? It's the same king that was like, oh, so they're not gonna come and then they're gonna also kill my messengers. Yo, let's first burn down all of them, burn up the whole, and let's bring them over there. Yeah, them over there, go to highways and the byways, the ones who ain't even supposed to. Yep, come on and bring down. So now we know that the king is about that life. He's like, if you cross or disrespect me, so now you got somebody that shows up and somehow made his way through without wearing. The very first thing that he asks, he says, why don't you have clothes on? But he addressed him still as friend. He's a misfit. He's an outlier. He's out of place. He doesn't look like how everybody else looks like. And still he is considered a friend until he isn't. I don't know how to interpret why he was speechless. Mm-hmm. My interpretation is that he was just like, well, I'm here, ain't I? Friend, why don't you have? He's like, oh, where the food at, right? Like, I don't understand. Who are you? Who are you? And so he's out here, probably, I don't know, has a sense of entitlement. I made it through the gates. That's all that matters. No, he made it through the gates, but there's a culture in the gates. And so he was considered friend until he wasn't. And then he was forcibly removed. What we end up doing is forcibly removing, or even not even before we don't even remove, we just prevent people from coming in all together and don't give them the opportunity to feel accepted, even though they don't look like we look. That's how I would navigate it.
You got to belong before you can really believe, because
that's good.
Because the other side of it is for whatever and we make it super complicated, whatever our construct is.
Yeah.
We force people into an idealistic version of our construct, which many of us don't really abide by. It's, this is our norm. But then people do all that, jump through all those hoops.
Yeah.
A lot of times change relationships and connections and practices and all of that.
Yeah.
And then they go through our whatever process, and then they come in and we never call them friend. Like, this is just another person that looks like whatever we've established, but I don't talk to them. They're not.
Yeah.
They didn't grow up with us. They haven't been here long. They just got here.
They just got here.
I'm not trying to chill with these Colossians. Like that's not.
Lean on that.
It is.
Yeah.
And when we do those things, we like Chris was talking about last night. We actually get to the place where we're worshiping our particular framework.
Yeah.
We're making that. We're making how you dress a testing truth.
The object of, yeah. Jesus is the object of worship. But we have everything in the middle of between my experience with him and those things become the object. I feel like I cut you off though.
No, you're good. You're good. Because I was just going to come back and say, we also have to recognize that Jesus does not call all of us to be reformers of the culture in which we find ourselves.
Thank you.
Some of us are reformers. Like we look to reshape, rethink, guide where the culture is versus where it was. Some of us need to find different communities where we will experience acceptance.
Don't go on this one-man mission to try to change things that so here we are, right? Here we are, man. This is what Jesus did. This is what Paul did.
Yeah.
These are you have to assimilate. No, you don't have to, but assimilation in a culture is not a bad thing. The colonization of a culture is. So me imposing my cultural values onto another culture is wrong. It's ethically wrong. Even if I believe, oh, listen, I'm gonna go there.
Yep.
If your culture was a culture, and I think we've heard stories about this. If your culture was a culture of cannibalism, you just ate people. Oh, I'm hungry. I just need to have a. And you're vegetarian. So me as vegetarian who eats nothing but vegetables.
Super extreme right there.
And you who eat other people, this is very extreme. You show up to them. And what you end up doing with your cultural values, you say, listen here, I'm gonna need you to stop doing that. There are plenty of reasons why you shouldn't be eating other people. We're not going to get into all of them. But let's just say that there's a healthier way to gain nutrition. But the way that you colonize, though, it's the way. So there's one. It's one thing. It's one thing to and I want to read this because this is important. Because you're going to be like, well, isn't that what we do as witnesses and evangelists? Like we help people to change particular ideologies of where they are to understand and to adopt a new culture of Christ or a belief system that's different. Colonization refers to a large-scale population where or a movement where the migrants who come in maintain strong links with their former country, gaining significant privileges over other inhabitants of the territory by such links. Colonization means that when you show up, you are not just changing that person's whole lifestyle, but you then also create an inferior complex within them that you who came and changed them need to submit to the better way. Okay, what do I mean? So you show up with Christ values, but somehow it doesn't point back to Christ. It points back to the signs, the symbols, the practices that you have established and that your ancestors have established, and that becomes the only way to do it.
The only way.
That's why colonization is a problem. It's not the changing of itself is the thing. I mean, this is what constructivism, for those of y'all that are teachers, y'all, constructionism, these forms of pedagogy is when you come together, you share meaning, and then you come up with new understanding together, both teacher and student.
Yeah.
Right. Even though the teacher is still guiding and facilitating the direction, they already know what y'all got to learn. But in order to get you there, they have more discussions versus just a lecture driven
Yep. It's
approach.
co-creation.
Yeah, it's co-creation. And even in that co-creation, the teacher maybe not might admit it, but they're also learning some new stuff, even though they got the curriculum. So you show up with the curriculum, you show up with the blueprint of what it looks like to have a better life or a new life in Christ. The problem is, by the time you're done with that group that you have reformed, they're not looking at Christ, they're looking back at you, but as a superior. Okay. So we going back. Once again, it's not the signs and the symbols or the rules as much as it is what weight do those rules hold over other people, including yourself. Are you free from those laws? You should be in Christ, yes. Are some of those rules that you still practice, could they be beneficial as even a reminder to understand why those rules were even placed to begin with? Absolutely. Like, cool, go ahead. However, those rules are not superior and should not be superior to, number one, Christ, but also to the people or individuals that you just have just so adamantly decided they ain't living right. I'm gonna go ahead and change them. So that's your job now?
That was your assignment? Nah, I don't think it was.
And even if it was, even if by changing somebody's core values in their cultural system, you change that, cool. But who does it all point back to at the end?
Who is it for?
Because most times, when we have masses of people who are adopting a new culture, they end up being submissive to the people who help to change. Because then it's like, well, if it wasn't for me, you would have never, you were still eating heads.
I brought you in.
I
brought you in.
We taught y'all about planting carrots.
And because I brought you in, you need to adhere.
And you owe me something. Yeah.
My way.
And that's how we live. Yeah. That's how we live in a lot of this in our cultural in our church. A lot of our church society is you owe me. I baptized you, or we took you in, so now you owe us something. That's why the bully culture in church is very strong, where they'll ask you to do something, but they're not really asking you. They're more so telling you. Because they owe you, because you owe them.
Yeah. And that's one of the, I know we spent quite a bit of time on this, but when we think about how we complicate, and we go back to what we were talking about last night, there is a simplicity to Paul's expression of the gospel, no matter who he's talking to. Right. Colossians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians. There's a simplicity, and that simplicity often flies in the face of, when you look at the gospels, what Jesus was fighting against was the complicated, nuanced misinterpretation of who God is,
right,
and what is it like to have relationship.
That's it.
So that continues in Paul's ministry as churches are planted. There's still this fight against this overcomplication, because can it be that simple? Nah, it can't be that simple. John 3:16 is pretty doggone simple.
And it needs to be, because we read that Jesus is mysterious.
Yes.
He is the so why add on all of the other on top of what already is hard to understand without? Because not only is he mysterious, so he's not only the embodiment of mystery, he's also the embodiment of full. Colossians 2, y'all, wisdom and knowledge. So how can you So you're going to learn and understand more, only to be
More confused.
or at least to realize that you really don't know much.
No.
And not only that, but he's also reality. So here we are now, where man, because you hit a great point. Like I think that Paul, not even I know he's written time and time again. Listen, I came with y'all with simple speech.
Yeah.
Like he says it. He's written about this, like where it's really just a demonstration of the power of the Spirit. Like that's what I want y'all to hang on to, not to my eloquent speech. Like, yeah, I ain't on that. As a matter of fact, I don't want you to be on that. I want you to get the plain truth. And so, it's interesting. It is an interesting place that we are in.
The closer we get to the end of time, and I know we're going to have a conversation about framing out what soon means. Soon. The closer we get to the end of time, or at least the closer you get to your personal timeline, you realize it's not that deep.
What if God gave? Never mind.
Lana, don't get me. See, Lana trying to get me started.
That's the only reason why some churches, she says, only have 20% of the congregational members participating in ministries at churches, because some governing bodies only deem 20% worthy of participation.
Yep. I'm just gonna put it on the screen and let it ride. Y'all
Let
do.
ride.
Carlos said I'm in a pickle jar.
Mm-hmm.
I said, elder of the church whose wife finds nothing with wearing jewelry at times. I'm very conflicted with how to feel and respond. Just putting it on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I let it resonate. The older we get, y'all, you realize the more, and in the context of Colossians, the more spiritually mature we become, the more we realize it ain't that deep.
For the sake, listen, y'all, of the urgency.
Yes.
See, it ain't that deep for the sake of not being that deep. Won't cut it, because something will be deep enough for you. And if you don't have the foundation, is he's coming back. I would rather limit the scope of my freedom just so that I can commune or connect or to evangelize, whatever it is, not even with unbelievers, with believers. I'm gonna go ahead and Pat says we minor in the majors and major in the minors. So listen, OG Carlos. This is, Acts 15, right? There's a whole council on this whole circumcision situation, right? I bring this up almost all the time now. I think Paul is like, listen, it's not that deep, not even that deep. It's not even that relevant anymore. You don't have to be physically circumcised to demonstrate your salvific status. You're already saved by grace through faith. Like that's it. That's it. You don't have to do an external mutilation when God has spiritually done the external mutilation. Colossians 2, y'all. He's already cut. Mm-hmm. He didn't just cut the foreskin of one organ. He done did it of the whole body. Okay. So then it's in Titus. He says, Timothy.
Listen, man.
Listen, I know we just had a whole council and we just settled on the fact that circumcision ain't that. It's irrelevant. Physical circumcision is irrelevant to the whole reality of salvation. But we are entering into a community. These Greeks, boy, I don't know what they do, but they be checking the toga. They be checking. And somehow, I don't know how they know, but they be checking the loins, Tim. And Tim, I don't know how they know. But I'm going to need you to go on ahead and snip so that we can get this word in. Because if you don't, all they going to talk about
is
so as a grown man, I can't even imagine. As a grown man, he had to go ahead and participate in a practice that is irrelevant to the larger scheme of salvation, the reality of salvation. It makes no sense. Just like how P had to wear a tie, and I had to it does not matter. However, because of who we're going to, we don't want anything to get into the way. Okay. So this elder, he knows what he signs up for.
On both sides.
On both sides. And it's not even about the elder, exactly. The elder, as much as it is his wife. And we got to get to a point. This is where the whole process, the whole principle of love, when he begins in verses 1 and 2, I pray, man, that y'all are knit together in love. Because what love will do is love will say, you know what, even though I don't see a problem with wearing particular accessories and to make myself, to accentuate my beauty, because of the community that I'm choosing to consistently be a part of, because their cultural norm is that this is, if not offensive, it's just a distraction. Take this stuff off. Because my communion with them is more important than the accessories that I put on.
I would counter in some ways that love also says, as a community, we are going to be careful how we treat people based on our interpretation of what we see.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's tough. We do this with team building and organizational design.
Yeah.
It's unfair to ask one person
to. Yeah.
And that's why, when Paul talks, he's like, listen, okay, I got something for you.
Yeah.
But don't think that y'all off the hook.
Right.
So to say, okay, what is the principle and interpretation of love and not being a distraction in your faith, however you interpret that. Also, conversely, as community, are we holding up
thank you, yes,
models
that's good
that don't do anything for what we say we're going to bring about in our community? And I think it goes back to conversation. It goes back to a conversation of, I know for y'all pray my strength, because if you come at me, I'm digging in.
Yeah.
I'm digging in because of the way you came at me.
I ain't stand for you. So since you're here,
you calling for me? Okay, cool. That's how we doing it. I'm digging in. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's some things in my house, man. I'm like, this not this the way I want to do it.
Yeah.
My wife is like, nah.
Yeah, we ain't. That's not
what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
But if she had came at me like,
yeah.
Ain't no way. I would be even more undignified.
Listen. I'm so glad that you brought up this other side, because with the same Carlos, with the same situation, if there is a perpetuation of people feeling like I can't or shouldn't do things because anything that I do is not anything that I do can be like, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells for certain things in general.
Yep.
Then there's a culture that the community needs to deal with.
Yep.
And this is where the whole love reciprocates, because you're right. It's harder to boil an ocean. It's easier to just say, you know what, nobody else is, so I'm just going to go ahead and assimilate. And like we said, assimilate is not necessarily a negative thing, right? Jesus assimilated. Another time. So I'm about to get thrown off. So assimilate is not a bad thing. However, if the culture or the community is not willing to be receptive to different, because they've turned assimilation into colonization.
Oh man, are you gonna come down to the end and just drop that?
Yeah, just gonna go ahead and just put that in your spirit. Right, because now it's no longer the fact that I'm choosing not to be a hindrance for the betterment of my community. It's my community would berate me if I ever come out looking different. Totally different things, y'all. Two
Woo.
totally different things. Same
Woo.
action, different intention. Colossians chapter 2. So you can dress holy, and that is, I use that very subjectively, what dressing holy means. Whatever holy looked like to you when I said that, that's what holy is for you.
Because some of us, listen,
But so you can dress a particular way, but what's the intent? And that's what Paul is trying to get at here. What's the intent? Are you still bound by what you're wearing or what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're behaving? Because if you are bound to those things, then you don't know Jesus just yet.
no, we still growing. We on milk.
Right. Or maybe you do know him, but you need to mature in the faith.
Mm-hmm.
And then you now have to ask yourself, if I'm in a community that's still sipping on milk, is it time for me to? And sometimes it's not even a negative thing, y'all. Sometimes it's just time for a different community. And that's okay. Sometimes you just need to.
Chris, I know we about to end, but it's so, and that's one of the things. It's one of the many parts of what we've been dealing with.
Yeah.
To make it over complicated,
Mhm.
even wrestling with what we have as a construct for church, and community right now, for the most part, isn't biblically framed. So we're wrestling with seeing through the glass darkly and shadows and types.
There's some of y'all that need to just stop posting frustrations on Facebook. Not our worship and word community. Please, but for those who might perhaps come across this stream from a different, I mute y'all. I started following some of y'all. I'm like, if you haven't left yet, then you are a slave to the culture that you're in.
A slave to the culture.
You should have been left. Who's stopping you? Well, if your culture has instilled in you that by either leaving or changing, you'd be labeled or deemed a particular kind of person, then I get it. It's easier to go to task online than it is to actually speak up in person, or just be like, you know what? Ain't for me. And not buckle when somebody comes after you and say, hey.
No, don't buckle.
Don't buckle.
Because the people who use sub posting about ain't even reading that.
They
don't even care. And that's what freedom looks like. We have, I think one of the things that we have conditioned people is that salvation is not just in Jesus. That's what we say. Salvation ain't just in Jesus. Salvation is in the day that we worship. Salvation is in what we eat and how we dress. And if we're honest, salvation is in the location in which we gather as a community.
Oh, because one church is more closer to Christ than another. What you mean, P? Yeah.
I can never leave this community and go to another one because
he ain't with y'all like he is with us. I don't know. I feel the spirit a little closer, and that is the problem. That is the problem. When you are free, you will know that you are free.
Yeah.
But your freedom does not and should never be separate from your love, first for God and for each other. Because if it is, you will use your free. You will colonize people with your freedom. I know we just opened up a whole nother can of worms. So your message up is not that deep. You don't have to do those things. What you could end up doing is changing a culture by trying to free them from what they believe and understand the relationship with Christ and a lifestyle of Christ and worship of Christ looks like. And by doing all of that, what you end up doing is Line is on a roll tonight. By doing all of that, you then use the liberation as the thing, as the object of worship versus the Christ of the liberation. Y'all see how this works? Woo. And even Paul talks about that. He's like, listen, some things I just won't do because you will be a stumbling block to somebody else in your freedom. It's love, man. So that whole knit together, it's deep. It's deep. It's work too.
And like everything in this space, we recognize that 82% of the time, 87% of the time, Chris and I are struggling, wrestling with how we frame and understand and interpret these things like everybody else.
It may sound like I know what I'm talking. Well, I do, but it may sound like I got all the answers, but I don't.
Like we just, and that's the important part of community and growth that is essential.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, and these things, Chris and I we don't see 100%. Oh, I see it this way. And no, that's faith. Faith can only be faith. Belief can only be belief if it's tested against other beliefs.
Right. And so for
your beliefs got to come into contact with other philosophies and ideologies. It's you got to see, oh shoot. Yeah. Oh, okay. So, okay. That's
I ain't telling y'all to go ahead and open up the Quran, but what I will say is maybe it's time to engage other believers outside of your denomination. Start there.
Absolutely.
And there may be some things that you realize, wow, I never realized how it sounds. The way that I'm saying it based on, and it's not about how you sound or how you look. It's, Pete just said it, the beliefs. And how you can then compare that or dialogue through that with somebody else who believes the same Jesus that you do.
It's important. It's important.
Yeah. But the moment that you start thinking that your belief system puts you on a different plane towards Christ than somebody else's does,
you're in danger there.
That's where you're going to have a hard time even listening to other people.
Jesus, they not with us. What we doing? Let them be.
You don't want us to torch them?
And remember, my joke is we think that we're the ones with Jesus and not the ones that Jesus says let them be. Y'all go pray.